Oh, goody.
Alright, what's going on everybody? Zombies here again, and today we're back with another Marvel Snap video. So in this one, we are taking a look at getting a complete collection in Marvel Snap. I recently received the last 2 cards I needed to have a full collection of every card in the game. After rolling on some spotlights for the last 2 cards I needed, Howard the Duck and Hercules. I thought it would be a good a time as any to take a look back at what that journey entailed of actually getting every single card in Marvel Snap, as well as the other things I got along the way, and maybe most importantly, what it cost to get all that stuff. So we're going to start it out with taking a look at my history with the game, just a little brief overview here. So I started playing Marvel Snap back in the beta in summer of 2022, shortly after the beta began. I played this game very casually. At the time, I was only able to play it on Android devices, and not owning any Android devices, I was limited to an emulator on PC as my only way to play the game for a couple months. After a bit of time though, the game was soft released in the Philippines as kind of like a test run leading up to full release, so I used some Apple account shenanigans to be able to actually play it on my phone, which made me play the game a bit more than I had been previously when I only had it via emulator. Main reason I'm bringing this up is because I played the game very casually. I was a very casual Marvel Snap player. I was focused on other games at the time and really just didn't have a whole lot of time to devote to diving deeply into the game. So it's kind of fun to take a look back and see what the experience was like as a casual player versus a very invested one now. So yeah, I played the game super casually. I wasn't even completing all my dailies and weeklies a lot of the time. I would just log in when I felt like it, usually play a handful of games after I finished up stream or working on a video or something. Now in beta, I spent a grand total of $15 whole. $5 of that dollars was to buy my one and only cosmetic store variant purchase, which was Artgerm Carnage. If you don't know, the prices for variants are actually different in beta. Every variant cost 750 gold, and they were all available in the collection track. So I went to buy some gold to get this variant. Normally that gold would have cost me 10 bucks, but there was a promotion on Google Play or something, so I ended up only having to spend $5 to get the gold I needed, and that was the only cosmetic I bought during my whole time in beta. And then the other $10 I spent on getting the Thor Season Pass, which is kind of funny because looking back on it, it was actually one of the weaker season passes, all things considered. This was back when Thor was a 4/6, which was really just not a great card. And Jane ended up coming later via Nexus events, which were the controversial gacha mechanic about how they were going to implement new cards into the game that actually almost killed Snap before it even left beta. Eventually I'll do a dedicated video on that for those who weren't around for the time, but for now all you need to know is that Nexus events were really bad. The primary audience of the beta players in Marvel Snap was card game players, and card game players didn't take too kindly to this gacha model that Second Dinner was trying to use to implement new card releases into the game. And I was definitely one of the players in that camp of being very put off by what Nexus events kind of told me about how they wanted to monetize the game, and I was so put off I quit the game entirely. Now they eventually did walk things back and decide to not go the way of Nexus events, and all things considered, I think they did a pretty good job to restore a lot of the players' faith in refunding players their gold spent on Nexus events, letting them keep the stuff they got from them, and gifting Jane Foster to everyone in the community for free. That was about as good as you could have asked for, and a lot better than I think many players, myself included, were expecting them to react to the controversy, but it wasn't enough to really bring me back to the game. I still felt like they were eventually going to try and repackage this gacha model, and I was really put off by that, so I did not come back to the game in spite of this response. And well, what do you know, eventually they did find a much more sweet spot post-release to make the game way more gacha-y, nowhere near as offensive as Nexus events were originally, but there is no denying that Marvel Snap is now the gacha game they always wanted it to be. So after quitting Marvel Snap, I did end up returning to it about a week or so before the global launch. At the time, the main game I had been focusing on, Hearthstone Mercenaries, was going down the toilet, and it just didn't seem like there was much of a future there in creating content around that mode, unfortunately, so I wanted to explore something else, and Snap just kind of lined up. I was having a lot of fun with the game after revisiting it. The content creation scene was really booming around its release, and it seemed like something a lot of the people who viewed my content also had an interest in, since there was a lot of overlap in terms of the card game, strategy game kind of stuff. So I switched to full-time Marvel Snap content on the 1st of November back in 2022, and been at it ever since. So that's my background with Snap. That's how it started, how we got to release. And one more thing worth noting here, when I quit the game, I think I was around collection level 1200 or so. So when I did return to the game, I had a bit of a head start compared to the players who were just joining the game at full launch, but had nowhere near as many cards available as the players who had been playing throughout all of beta. So where have we gone from launch to now? What have we collected and what has it cost? I scoured through my whole collection of Marvel Snap cards and variants, and the numbers were pretty interesting to see. In terms of unique cards, I have 961 unique cards. That is including the base art versions of cards as well as variants for them, but not including any splits for any of those cards. I'm currently 19,713 collection levels, so just under 20k. Along the way, I have amassed 57 inked splits, 33 gold splits, and 10 Inker gold splits that also have the Kirby Crackle effect. And in terms of resources saved up, I currently have 43,600 collector's tokens, 8,270 gold, and 22 spotlight caches. As someone who's always really liked the art in this game, I had a goal of trying to get a variant for every character I had. I wouldn't necessarily go out of my way to buy a variant for every character, especially if it was one that I didn't play very much, but in combination with just opening them on the track, I eventually came really close to completing my goal. As of right now, there are only 5 characters in the game that I do not have a variant for outside of the base art. Those characters are Scar, Havoc, Hercules, Werewolf by Night, and Negasonic Teenage Warhead. And a lot of these characters have very few available variants for them to begin with. I'm sure I'll eventually get one for them over time, but it's not something I'm particularly worried about completing right now. In terms of playtime with the game, according to Steam, I have about 1,700 hours on Marvel Snap. And then in terms of playing it on mobile, that's a lot harder to estimate, as I don't really have good numbers to reference for that. I would say I probably played on mobile about half as often as I did on PC as a rough guesstimate. I used to play on mobile a lot more. Now I'm mainly playing it on PC when I'm streaming and stuff, but I do still play a little bit on mobile or tablet. So that brings us to about 2,600-ish hours, which is a crazy amount of time, honestly. That essentially boils down to about 110 days of gameplay, which is, well, that's a lot. While I never really chased any high ranks in Snap while I was playing it casually in beta, I did want to get better at the game if it was going to be my main source of content creation. So every season since launch, I've been able to get Infinite, and we've amassed 15 Infinity avatars from the Infinity Conquest along the way. And each season, I'm usually hanging around the top 500 to top 1,000 in terms of the global leaderboard. I don't actually play a whole ton of ladder since there aren't really any rewards for it, so I usually go to Conquest much more often instead. Maybe that changes in the future, but I very much do not enjoy playing against Loki, so for that reason, I have been staying away from ladder post-Infinite. And here we can see some of the really cool splits that I got along the way. I really like the splitting mechanic. I think it's kind of fair to say that there are 2 games within Marvel Snap, maybe 3 if you count gaming the monetization model, but there's the actual gameplay of slinging your cards around, and then there's the sub-game of collecting the various arts and chasing splits, and seeing the developer roadmap in terms of upcoming features. It's very clear Second Dinner also view that as kind of its own game.
Did you do it?
Yes.
What did it cost?
Everything.
Now for the answer to the big question that you've probably been waiting for since clicking on this video. Now you know what I got out of the game after all this playtime, but how much money did this actually cost? And before we announce that number, I do want to mention there are some factors here that are definitely making the amount of money and time I've spent on this game different than it will probably be for most players. As someone who creates content around the game, I obviously make money back from that content. If I was not making content about Marvel Snap, there's absolutely no way I would have anywhere near this much time or this much money spent in the game. Probably nowhere even close. I'm also a member of the Snap Content Creation Program, which one of the benefits of is receiving a 2,000 gold a month allowance to use on whatever you want. So Had a little bit of bonus gold ever since getting in the program, which I think happened early last year or so. But with all that aside, how much total have I spent on Marvel Snap, and do I regret it? Well, it took a while to tally up all the numbers. I had to go through a lot of bank statements going back through the last almost year and a half. So it took a while, but after tallying things up between mobile and Steam purchases, I came to a fairly large number. Before I say what it is, if you want, enter a guess in the comments below. Obviously, you could very easily cheat this if you wanted to, but I think it'd be entertaining to see what people think it cost for all the stuff I've shown in the video relative to what it actually cost. So yeah, leave that below if you're so inclined. But here we go. Drum roll, please. The amount of money I have spent in Marvel Snap as of today is about 4,000 US dollars, which is honestly pretty crazy. That is a whole heck of a lot of money. Now, as an avid card gamer, I'm no stranger to spending money in card games. As someone who played Hearthstone for the better part of a decade and has played Magic the Gathering for the last 6 or 7 years, I'm definitely no stranger to spending money in card games, but it is kind of crazy to me that I think I've spent more money in Snap over the course of from launch until now than I spent on Hearthstone in like 8 years. And now the other looming question, do I regret it? Honestly, not really. We do the math on the amount of time I've played the game relative to the amount of money I've spent on it. Roughly comes out to about $1.50 an hour of entertainment. And as far as entertainment costs go, I don't think that's unreasonable. Now, would I have spent anywhere near that if I wasn't making money back off the game and producing content about it? Certainly not. Nowhere close. And as time has gone on, things have changed with the game, and just my relationship with the game has changed too. I don't think I'm going to be someone who continues to spend a large amount of money on Marvel Snap. In fact, starting next month, I'm planning on becoming pretty much a season pass only gamer. After looking over the various bundles that are scheduled to be coming out via the data mines, at least the ones we still have left, and some of the decisions I've seen made around the game that I haven't really been a fan of, both balance and monetization wise, like the fact that we aren't getting any more data mine information or an official release schedule of bundles, it's just made it a lot easier to not really have much incentive to spend money on the game, which is something I'm pretty happy about. So while I don't really have any regrets of what I've spent on the game thus far, I have no intention to keep spending money on it the way I was in the past. I'm happy with a lot of the stuff I have in the game. I think one thing that they're eventually going to have to figure out is that if they want to monetize cosmetics, I think they have a real problem in terms of once you have a variant for, most of the characters that you like, there's not really much incentive to chase other cosmetics. At least for me. I know some people like chasing a million different variants, and that's cool, but even as someone who is fairly driven by cosmetics, I just don't really find that much value in going after new cosmetics when I already have one I like for a given character. Now, maybe that will change a bit with the mastery system. The mastery system is actually probably the thing I am personally most excited for out of the roadmap stuff we saw. It's nice that you'll at least get some sort of value out of getting a random variant off the collection track that you probably won't ever end up using, assuming it's for a character you like and you want to advance the mastery on. I really wish they would let you favorite multiple variants and then pick one to put in your deck. This is something Hearthstone did quite a while ago with hero skins, where you could favorite multiple of them and get a randomly selected one in a game. I think that would not only make players a lot happier, but also kind of juice the monetization in terms of getting people to buy multiple variants for a given character that they like playing. But who knows if they are actually planning on implementing something like that or not. I didn't want to make this video too much of a deep dive into the economy. Maybe that's something I'll do at a further point, but I did want to mention something about the economy that is changing coming into this new year, and that is that the game is getting more expensive. Second Dinner is releasing an additional new card every month alongside the season pass card in that first week. And while I'm definitely not the person who's going to break down and do all the deep math about it, Lauren Whatever has done some great articles over on Marvel Snap Zone about it. And with these changes to the economy coming and nothing announced in terms of offsetting those changes or helping the players get more resources, it seems like, at least for free-to-play players, the new economy is now at the point where it is going to be worse than it was before the Spotlight update. So that's definitely something that is a bit discouraging, especially if you're free-to-play only, but these additional costs will affect all players. Now, I think adding more cards into the game is good, but I really do think they need to offset that in some way, providing some additional resources to help players offset that cost. Will it happen or not? We'll see with time, I guess. But it definitely is a bit concerning, especially when There was no mention on the roadmap of any intended changes or improvements coming to the economy, and even more so when we get developer comments recently, how apparently their economy just can't handle adding any more additional resources to the collector reserves that many players have been found to be lacking since the overhaul to the economy that happened last summer with Spotlight caches. Before we wrap things up, I do just want to mention that any of the criticism I have about the game comes from a place from really wanting the game to be the best it can be. I think Snap has a whole ton of potential, and it can be kind of frustrating to see it be squandered at times. Snap really is a huge double-edged sword of being built from the ground up for a mobile gaming experience. I think there's a reason essentially no other card game on the market is in real competition with it right now, because none of those games provide that quick, snappy experience that Snap has in terms of quick games that you can just pick up and put down at a moment's notice. It's really something I hope other card games eventually try to compete with, but for all the pros that element has added to the game, we still have a lot of the cons of all this very obviously mobile-driven microtransaction monetization, which hasn't really been great and feels like it's been getting worse over time. And with the $100 million they have just received in funding for their studio, including their next unreleased title that is apparently early in the works, it'll be very interesting to see how the monetization develops, especially when you remember that $100 million is from a venture capitalist group, which is really just a loan that they're going to have to pay back. So yeah, that's pretty much going to wrap it up for this video. I'd love to hear what you think in the comments below, and I'd love to hear about your experience with Snap. When did you start playing? What collection level are you? Are you a small spender? Are you a big spender? Are you somewhere in between, free to play? I'd be curious to hear it. It's always interesting to see how everyone has a bit of a different journey with these types of games. That's going to wrap it up for this one, though. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, remember to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.